Hey, so I just wanted to make this video. I chose to do it outside so we can have a nice natural view. I wanted to talk about the concept of after you start waking up and you start realizing that this is a simulation, you start really realizing that we live in a matrix, whether the people around you are real or are they NPCs. So for me, it took time at first because obviously, if you've been around people for many years, family, friends, you don't want to all of a sudden look at them from that perspective of being like a little program bot or something like this, right? There are people that are much easier for you to look at as NPCs. For example, if they've given you trouble, like coworkers or people in your, people who you have to deal with, but that normally aren't necessarily family or friends. Okay, but the thing is, it's those family and friends that are the ones that usually make the most impact on us. And whether we like it or not, we need to reflect on whether or not they are people who are helping our spiritual development or they're there to cause the distractions and keep us back. Okay? So, in my case, some of the people in my life, especially like growing up, and reflecting and knowing the definition of what an NPC is and what their objectives are. We have people in our lives that it's very easy for us to like pinpoint and say like, okay, she's a narcissist, this person has a Jezebel spirit, blah blah blah. Okay, fine. But as part of my journey, it has made me really sit down and remember every single incident that has happened in my life and every single person that I've come into contact with. And every day, little by little, I go realizing or recognizing who were those individuals in my life that were there to promote distraction. Okay? I'll give you an example, especially because one of the people who I really was fond of and I considered like a close in-law, I would say, an ex-in-law, but an in-law. I always considered that we were so alike because we tended to be good people. I wouldn't say necessarily that he's a bad person, but I did notice as I went waking up that even like publishing some of these videos, like I said, everything is a matrix, nothing is coincidence. Precisely that person decided to try to call in and interrupt on 2 different occasions, on 2 different days when I was like deciding to post these videos. And not only that, when I didn't answer, because obviously I didn't want the distraction, but when I did return the phone call to just kind of like, just be like, okay, let's see what the urgency was about, because the person was like calling repeatedly during the filming of some of these vlogs that I do, and I call back just to see like what was the urgency, and the entire topic or mood of the conversation was clearly bringing gossip, but gossip that was meant to put me in a state of annoyance or worry or argumentative. And again, this person, I already had started to suspect them because I just made it a general rule that anybody who I noticed was trying to lure me out of the Mediterranean back to New York was definitely NPC, because I feel like the Matrix is deliberately trying to return me back to out of spiritual alignment, right? To ley lines that don't match my spiritual I guess like level right now, right? And so it was interesting because I was like I was basically like, already suspecting this person, and then when they came with the conversation, I immediately knew that it was very certain that I was correct, and yes, this person is an NPC and they've been around my life, and this is just to show you that a lot of people who sometimes we've confided in, who we've trusted, who we thought of as brothers, or sisters, whatever, are people who could very well be placed there in the matrix to basically distract you and basically, keep you back, okay? Not only that, because I know who this person is and I know the dynamics of this person, like I said, he's an in-law, and I know the dynamics of his relationship with his wife and everything like this, and I know all the stories. It made me even realize, I'm like, wow, maybe his wife is the one that has a real soul, and his whole purpose or like, honestly, the things that happen between them, I noticed that, maybe he's there to also disrupt her and make her get emotionally charged, and maybe keep her back as well in many ways. So it's interesting. I'm gonna do a completely different video related to that when it comes to dating. I am celibate now. I'm going on 2 years of being celibate, but obviously I've never seen anyone who's been gang stalked talk about, how they go about selecting partners. Obviously it's going to be way harder. I've heard people actually say that, chosen ones actually who say they prefer going out with an NPC because they're predictable versus someone who maybe has a soul, who can not necessarily be entirely awake, so therefore they're very easily provoked, and they are unpredictable. Everybody has their taste and everything like that for what they're willing to put up with. So I'm going to do a completely different video related to dating in the matrix and selecting partners, because obviously that has been my downfall in this matrix, honestly. It's always been related to a lot of the relationships that I was in, and that have led me into situations or setups and problems like that in the matrix. So the most important thing is, like I always say, to test the spirit. It has nothing to do necessarily with the race of anyone, because at least there's a couple billion of how should I say, of these NPCs running around. So they pertain to every single socioeconomic group, race, religion, etc. But yeah, it takes a toll on you a little bit, because you start to really feel like you want to go back and call some of those friends from high school and ask them some questions and test, were they real? Were they kind of like NPC-ish, etc., etc., etc. So basically, I think one of the ways that you can recognize that someone is an NPC is, obviously, if they seem to have not changed at all over time, especially if you're someone who's moved away from your city or your town and you go back and it's like the person is completely the same. There's been no growth whatsoever, right? And like I said, the conversation, either you have people, depending on the NPC, and then you have some that they are very, their conversation is very blah. They're not talking about anything deep, and you notice that when you try to connect with them on a deeper level about topics or things like this, they kind of shut you down, or they kind of change the topic. Like, they're not interested in speaking about anything remotely, I guess, philosophical, whatever, like that. About life, especially, they like to talk about mundane things, very mundane questions, and some of them like to just, bring you into the loop, reminding you about things from the past. Just a lot of little details. I mean, it really depends, but it's definitely an exercise I would recommend anyone who's awakening, who's chosen and who's awakening after, praying and discernment, to start questioning the people around you, and if need be, getting rid of them from your life. That's all.